The guilt hit me the second I opened my apartment door and saw Sarah's face. Not anger. Not tears. Just this empty, hollow look that told me she already knew. My phone was still buzzing with texts from Jessica, the coworker I'd been seeing for 3 months, but suddenly those messages felt like poison in my pocket. "Who is she?" Sarah asked, her voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it. 3 years together. 3 years of her trusting me completely, never questioning the late nights or weekend work trips. We'd been talking about marriage just last month. She'd even started looking at rings online, showing me pictures with that excited smile that used to make my chest tight with happiness. Now it made me sick. I could have lied. Should have lied. But something about the way she stood there, still in her scrubs from her nursing shift, looking so small and tired, broke something in me. "Jessica from accounting." The words fell out like stones, each one heavier than the last. Sarah nodded once, like she was checking something off a list, and walked to our bedroom. I heard drawers opening and closing. The sound of her suitcase zipper. The affair started so stupidly. Jessica was new, flirty, always complimenting my presentations during team meetings. My buddies at work kept joking about how she was obviously into me, asking why I wasn't taking advantage when Sarah was working night shifts all the time. "You're young, man. Live a little before you settle down." At first, it was just coffee. Then drinks after work. Then her hand on my thigh in her car, telling me how much more exciting I was than her ex-boyfriend. How Sarah was lucky to have someone like me. How I deserved someone who appreciated me more. The lies I told myself were pathetic now. Sarah was always tired from work. We barely had sex anymore. She was focused on her career, not on us. I convinced myself I was just lonely, that this wasn't really cheating if it was just emotional. Then Jessica invited me to her place one night, and lonely became something much worse. For 3 months, I lived a double life. Deleting texts, making up work events, scheduling my guilt into neat little compartments. Sarah would come home exhausted and curl up against me, and I'd lie there thinking about Jessica's laugh, her apartment, the way she made me feel like someone important instead of just another boyfriend. The red flags were everywhere. Jessica never wanted to go anywhere public in our town. She'd get weird when I mentioned Sarah, changing the subject or making passive-aggressive comments about nurses thinking they're heroes. She was always pushing for more, wanting me to leave Sarah, talking about our future after knowing me for months, not years. But I was addicted to feeling wanted, to being someone's first choice instead of fitting around shift schedules and career goals. Sarah came back from the bedroom with her suitcase. She'd packed everything methodically, even her pictures of us. She wasn't crying, wasn't yelling. That scared me more than anything. "Sarah, please. We can work through this." It meant nothing. "She means nothing." She stopped at the door and looked back at me. "The thing is, Michael, I think she meant everything. And I meant nothing. That's why this happened." The door closed with a soft click. No slamming, no dramatic exit. Just the sound of my life ending and her walking away from the wreckage I'd created. I called her phone immediately. Straight to voicemail. Texted her apologies, explanations, promises. All marked as read, none answered. That night, I sat in our apartment surrounded by the spaces where her things used to be, finally understanding what I'd thrown away. Not just Sarah, but the life we'd built, the future we'd planned, the person I used to be before I became someone who could lie to the woman I loved for 3 months straight. Jessica texted me around midnight, asking if I was okay, if I'd told Sarah yet, if we could finally be together openly now. I turned off my phone and wondered how I'd become someone I didn't recognize. Sarah blocked me on everything within a week. Social media, phone, email. I became a ghost in her life, erased like I'd never existed. Her friends, who used to invite me to barbecues and game nights, acted like they'd never met me. When I ran into her coworker Emma at the grocery store, she looked right through me like I was invisible. The worst part was how quickly everyone knew. Sarah didn't blast me on social media or tell everyone what happened, but somehow the story spread anyway. Her sister posted a subtle Instagram story about supporting women through betrayal. Her best friend shared an article about narcissistic behavior. I wasn't named, but everyone in our social circle could read between the lines. Jessica lasted 2 weeks after Sarah left. Once the excitement of winning wore off, she realized what she'd actually won, a guy who'd cheated on someone he claimed to love. She started questioning everything I said, checking my phone, getting paranoid about my female coworkers. The relationship that had felt so thrilling when it was forbidden became suffocating when it was all we had. "You cheated with me," she said the night she ended it. "What makes me think you won't cheat on me?" I wanted to tell her it was different, that I'd learned my lesson, but the words felt hollow even in my head. Work became unbearable. Jessica and I had to sit through meetings together, pretending we were professional colleagues while everyone whispered about what had happened. HR eventually transferred her to a different department, but the damage was done. I was the guy who'd had an affair with a coworker and blown up his long-term relationship. Suddenly, I wasn't getting invited to team drinks or weekend events. My promotion got quietly shelved. My boss, who used to mentor me, became distant and professional. "We need people who show good judgment in all areas of their lives," he said during my review. "Leadership requires character." I moved out of the apartment Sarah and I had shared. Couldn't afford it alone, Couldn't stand being surrounded by memories of what I'd destroyed. My new place was a studio across town, barely big enough for my bed and couch. I'd gone from planning to buy a house with the woman I loved to living like a college student again at 28. The loneliness was crushing. Weekends stretched endlessly. I'd scroll through social media, watching friends post pictures from events I wasn't invited to anymore. Sarah had disappeared completely from my feeds, but sometimes her friends would post group photos, and I'd catch glimpses of her in the background. She looked lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. Meanwhile, I was drowning. I tried dating apps, telling myself I needed to move forward, but every conversation felt fake. How do you explain why your last relationship ended? How do you build trust with someone new when you've proven you can't be trusted? 6 months later, I heard through mutual friends that Sarah was seeing someone new. A doctor from her hospital. They'd gone public on Instagram, and apparently, he treated her like a queen. Posted pictures of flowers he'd sent to her work, planned elaborate date nights, brought her coffee during her breaks. Everything I should have been doing. I drove past her new apartment one night, not planning to stop, just torturing myself with evidence of the life she'd built without me. I saw them through the window, cooking dinner together, laughing about something. She looked happy in a way I couldn't remember her ever looking with me, especially not those last few months when I was lying to her every day. That's when it hit me, I hadn't just cheated on Sarah. I'd been emotionally absent long before Jessica came along. I'd taken Sarah for granted, stopped putting effort into our relationship, started looking for excitement elsewhere instead of creating it with the person I already had. The affair was just the final symptom of who I'd become, selfish, entitled, always looking for something better instead of appreciating what I had. I started therapy, but even that felt hollow. The therapist kept asking about my childhood, my relationship patterns, what had led me to cheat. But the truth was simpler and uglier. I cheated because I wanted to. Because I thought I deserved more. Because I was too immature and selfish to understand that real love requires work, commitment, and choosing the same person every day, even when it's not exciting. A year later, I heard Sarah got engaged. To the doctor, obviously. They looked perfect together in the engagement photos her friends shared. He'd proposed at the place where they had their first date, with a ring that was probably twice the size of anything I could have afforded. I realized I was never going to be the cautionary tale that ends with redemption. There was no winning Sarah back, no grand gesture that would fix what I'd broken. I'd had someone who loved me unconditionally, and I'd thrown her away for someone who didn't even want me once she had me. Now I'm 30, alone, starting over from scratch because I destroyed the best thing in my life for 3 months of excitement with someone who never really knew me. The worst part isn't the loneliness or the regret. It's knowing that somewhere out there, Sarah is building the life we could have had with someone who deserves her, while I'm left with nothing but the memory of who I used to be before I became someone who could betray the person I loved most. Some mistakes don't get second chances. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. I learned that the hard way, and now I get to live with it forever.